This is my presentation for creating a pivot table within a visual chart and a visual chart within Excel for Comp 2099 Lab 1. In this, I just wanted to go over a little bit of an overview that it's about the comprehension of the software and narration of the story, creativeness is what I'll be marked on. And these are the steps I'm going to take. I'm going to choose a data set, create the Excel pivot table charts within the data set with the data, and then I'm going to present this 5-minute video. So we learned a little bit about open data sets in our class. There are many open data sets to choose from. These are a few examples. I wanted to source out a specific data set for federal data in Canada. I did a Google search and I came to this site. You can get to this site by going to this. It's also StatCan information. And then this is their website that I did choose from. You can see that there's a lot of subjects here: education and training, persons, military, labor, all of these subjects they could, whenever you're searching for specific items, they may be in categories of many of these subjects. So whenever I chose to choose the topic, I utilized the filters within Stat Canada. These are the filters that you can use. So for example, the jurisdiction, I changed it to federal. I went through the subjects that were there. I'm Indigenous, so I chose to search for Indigenous information and to see what I could find for Indigenous information within the federal jurisdiction of Canada. And then I'll just kind of show you how I did that. So first I searched for Indigenous. And then once I do that search for Indigenous, it's going to bring me up quite a few records. And then I can bring those records down a little bit. Oh, the internet's not very... Sorry, I'm just going to pause for a second. Sorry about that. My internet was cutting out there. So here I searched for Indigenous and I found 330 records. I changed the jurisdiction to federal, so it was within just federal. And then I also changed it to search for stuff in law. This brought it down quite a bit. And then just to get through the presentation, I just wanted to bring forward that this is what I actually found. It was the raw data download for the number of homicide victims in homicide victims and persons accused of homicide by Indigenous identity, which I found was very interesting. So I downloaded the data set in CSV format, and then I took that data. This is the raw data that I actually downloaded, and I converted that to a pivot table, to pivot table data. And just to go over that, this is the raw data I got from Stats Canada, and you can see that there's quite a bit of data here. There's like 19,000 records, I believe. And so I took all of that data and I created this pivot table. Within the pivot table, I went through the data that was here and I changed what I wanted to see. So I wanted to see all of Canada. I wanted to see the number of accused of homicide, the number of homicide victims. And then I also wanted to see of which were Indigenous identity and non-Indigenous identity. And I moved those down to the preferred fields down here, changing the value to percentages because the raw data that it actually comes from Stat Canada is in numbers. So just go back to my... Once I actually had the raw data, or once I actually had the pivot table created, then I moved to the pivot table chart. And I created that pivot table chart with the information. So I also wanted to sort by gender, so females versus males, accused of homicide versus homicide victims, um, accused of homicide versus homicide victims of Indigenous identity. In conclusion, I just wanted to go over that for Lab 1, it was a small metric of data that would require more information to come to some conclusions. For example, it might bring questions, curiosity, need for more research, need for more education. So what is the population of Indigenous people versus non-Indigenous people within Canada to get those actual numbers of homicide victims to see what kind of impact that has? What are the statistics by province might be another question that brings forward for me. What other data can I find to support this research? And what else can I do with this data? And I'd just like to thank you for your time for listening to my presentation.